And of course, we know what happened to World Trade Center 7.
This morning's attacks. We'll probably find out more now about that from our correspondent, Jane Stanley. Jane, what more can you tell us about the Salomon Brothers building and its collapse?
Well, only really what you already know. Details are very, very sketchy. There's almost a sense downtown in New York behind me, down by the World Trade Centers, of just an area. That's what you would hope, because this whole downtown area behind me has been completely sealed off and evacuated, apart from the emergency workers. That was done by the mayor, Rudy Giuliani, much earlier today.
Listening to the mayor, Rudy Giuliani, a bit earlier, one of his messages was, you know, business as usual. You know, we won't let this get us down. But presumably, Jane, I think many of us, when we heard the news, perhaps on the radio earlier today, were completely flabbergasted.
Now you can watch the forensic evidence that as the mayor's emergency management office was blown up and destroying the strategic communications center, the video feeds routed through that office to conduct that war game were also destroyed, and the feed with Jane Stanley from the BBC. It went down on the news before it went down, in fact.
Gone, man.
This is where Jane broadcast that image from, and this is the window she broadcast from. The Pilgrim Society is one of 3 main membership-based organizations that, when combined with the other 2, Le Cercle and the 1001 Nature Trust, together represent the Western power monopolies, a global resource monopoly organization on the attack, wielding a strategic banking terrorism on all nations. The banking creates their enormous funding and their facilitized triskelion. Families in the worshipful company of international banking families employ the trick of the pen, the economic development loan, specifically used to gain access to the target country's banks to manage their loan currency. And soon after, the assigning of raw natural resources of a country in a distressed debt repayment plan. Then they bring that country down from within and raid its resources until it is impoverished and depleted and discarded, like England did with all their former colonial African states. Pattern. They murdered the Scots and Irish for peace. Pattern. In every country in the world where England stands, some indigenous population is murdered. How about the pre-Civil War period and the post-Civil War period in America? Jefferson paid Lewis and Clark to travel deeply into Indian territory to catalog the tribes, bring them goods and goodwill, and for 50 years Indians and the white man were partners. After England infiltrated our nation, bringing its banking and politics, the American Indians, like any indigenous population, facing the desires of the City of London to extract all the natural resources, were all but exterminated. Pattern. But the pattern is there in every step of the way since the Revolutionary War. A friend that does you harm. That is the England that is easy to see now. 9/11 is the history of the House of Orange Banking Corporation pretending to be a monarchy, and its English East India Company and the Dutch East India Company that built their dynastic wealth by extortion, slavery, pornography, and drug addiction for over 400 years. That's what we address here. Let's put 9/11 in its proper context now and identify the livery companies that had a hand in it as we go, because a much bigger problem is at play by the same people. Let's remember first that a Rhodes Scholar graduate, Bill Clinton, was giving pallets of money to the Taliban for order in Afghanistan and the armed control of the opium processing for the City of London, worshipful company of apothecaries and chemists. That the Wahhabi radical Islamists supported the Taliban, controlled the Saudi royal family legitimacy, and thereby oil production and sales of OPEC. Also that British Crown agents inside the worshipful company of engineers were in possession of the structural details for the support column designs and load information on the World Trade Center from the many British companies that were contracted by the Clinton government to repair the damage from the World Trade Center dry run exercise in New York, and began running simulations of cut charges, hydrodynamic shape charges, and ignition wiring design using the elevator shafts as the timer and wiring main conduit. These were passed to Le Cercle, then to Mossad inside FBI, CIA, and NSA, to coordinate Port Authority labor union power downs at World Trade Center for surveillance camera blackout periods. The Honorable Company of Armaments was participating in the Amalgam Virgo war game along with the Canadian military in preparation for another larger live war game in September 2001.
But isn't it a fact, sir, that prior to September 11, 2001, NORAD had already in the works plans to simulate in an exercise a simultaneous hijacking of 2 planes in the United States?
Specifically, Operation Amalgam Virgo, which I was involved in before I retired, was a scenario using a third world uninhabited aerial vehicle launched off a rogue freighter in the Gulf of Mexico.
The funny thing is, the Worshipful Company of World Traders became an accepted member of the Livery Guilds in January of 2000, but they had little world trade to trade. After the Aon Insurance Company on floor 100 was destroyed on 9/11, $70 trillion of international sovereign debt was transferred to the Worshipful Company of World Traders in the City of London. The Worshipful Company of World Traders are the 101st Guild Company. Was Aon destroyed? Or was Aon attacked?
There is a 5th dimension, beyond that which is known to man.
The Union soldiers burned Atlanta, but I assure you they took no pleasure in their work. They were forced to it by a man they hated more than they could ever hate the rebels. An ugly, sullen, unbelievably brutal man named William Tecumseh Sherman. To give you a more comprehensive idea of this great hero, let me read you a few extracts from the diary of Major Skelton. The date is Tuesday, September 11th, 1864. The city was ours. There was no need to destroy aught save that which could be of use in the fight against us. But Sherman was drunk with victory. He himself started the awful fires. The fires that destroyed that great citadel of grace and beauty.
The financial district of America is in Lower Manhattan. 9/11 may have represented an enormous tragedy to our country, but it represented an enormous financial boon to the City of London. And the skyscrapers and new business and the things being built in the center of the City of London represent the $70 trillion that are now handled, instead of World Trade Center 1, they're now handled in the City of London. We Americans have an odd and disturbing past with our former monarchy. A series of broken peace treaties in 1776 and 1812 with subsequent reinfiltration and deception practices that fundamentally changed the structure of our government, moving it towards a democracy, leading it to oligarchy after the American Civil War that they financed. But Manhattan Island may look like this today, but in 1776 it was a wilderness. Let's discuss a September in 1776. Admiral Howe invaded America to fight the revolution on August 11, 1776. By the end of the month, he had routed Washington, fighting for liberty, onto Manhattan Island. A peace treaty offer was made. What was not known was that King George only gave Admiral Howe the ability to pardon, to put down the rebellion, and demanded that we rescind our Declaration of Independence. That was on September 11, 1776. Franklin refused, and Howe immediately sailed north with his Navy Armada and attacked General Washington by surprise, resulting in battles that ended in our independence. So when we look at that morning in September 11, 2001, and the idea that the World Trade Center sat on the corner of Washington and Liberty Street on Manhattan Island, where Washington was fighting for liberty from England, and that the dead from that attack were buried at Fresh Kills landfill, a garbage dump on Staten Island, only a short distance from where the false treaty was tried to trick our founders to lay down arms against the crown. To paraphrase the great American, ask not what evil Britain will do. Ask what evil Britain will not do to maintain the world trade of drugs, money, and pornography.